Welcome to Be Your Greatest Asset, the Wellbeing series, especially for mums in business who want to feel inspired to live their best lives and to prioritize themselves every single day without guilt. Now, we've got Anne today, Anne Rajoo. She is an incredible motherhood coach and NLP therapist, practitioner. What do you call it? Therapist or practitioner?
Practitioner, yeah.
Practitioner. And today we're going to be talking about saying goodbye to mum guilt. So, Anne, would you like to introduce yourself in more detail?
Yeah, so I mean, you already said it, motherhood coach, NLP practitioner, mom of two boys, originally from Germany, living in Mauritius, this beautiful little island that I call my home now after 7 years, and that I'm hoping to one day welcome you, Michelle.
Yeah,
So
I love
that's
it.
still on the plan. We're manifesting it. But yes, I mean, my own journey really got me to what I'm doing today because I love motherhood. It's been a very interesting experience. In many ways, it went very different from how I had envisioned it. But what I always cherish about it is the amount that I've learned about myself through motherhood. And with that, I love sharing my experience, but I also love helping other moms changing their experience. And that's what I'm in the world doing at the moment. And mom guilt has been something that came up quite a lot recently. I've done a few things about it, and I thought it would be great to talk about it with you today.
Amazing. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here sharing. We're not new to each other, are we? We're good friends now, and you've interviewed me many times for your various summits and podcasts, and it's really nice to be able to have you as my guest for today. So saying mum to mum guilt. What is mum guilt? How would you um how would you explain mum guilt to somebody?
Yeah. Well,
Definition, let's start with.
there's
What
different
causes it?
types of guilt. So there are different types of guilt that we experience. Mom guilt is a label that a lot of us understand because moms in particular feel a lot of guilt because of what we're probably going to talk about today, because of the way motherhood is set up in society and the way, especially nowadays in our time and age, we are experiencing motherhood. And there's a lot of guilt that we carry that is particularly to the motherhood experience. So if you're not a mom, you still feel guilt. Everyone feels guilt, men, women, any human being feels guilt, and it's a human emotion. But moms have particular experiences that cause them to feel more guilt, I would say, than maybe other like people who are maybe not mothers or even fathers. I don't think fathers feel as much guilt. I mean, there's research that says 78% of moms feel mom guilt. 68% of them feel it at least once a day. So that's more than half of the moms around the world once a day feel guilt. So that's why we say mom guilt, even though it's just guilt. But the guilt I want to talk about today is particularly the toxic guilt. So there's natural guilt that is part of our human experience, and that kind of tells us, hold on, something is not quite right. Maybe you behaved in a certain way that is not really what you wanted to do. It's not really aligned. There's some guilt coming up. Okay, fine. But toxic guilt is the kind of guilt that we, especially moms, experience and feel even though we haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
So we may have done everything right, everything for our family, taken care of our children, fed them, put them to bed, sent them to school, washed the clothes, kept the house tidy, did whatever we had to do, and still feel this emotion of guilt, not having done it in the right way or not having done enough.
Yeah.
And that's the toxic guilt that is just not helpful, because so many moms, myself included, and I think you also had some sort of experience in your motherhood journey, where we do beyond and above everything, and we still feel like there is something that we haven't done right, and we feel guilty
Yeah.
about it. So yeah, this is the guilt that moms experience a lot, and it's not helpful
No.
because it's just it. I mean, the guilt as a basic emotion is there to tell you something is not quite there. Like, listen up, have a look, what's going on here. But when it comes to the toxic guilt or the mom guilt, it's not really the reality, because many moms that I know, and I'm sure the moms who listen to us today, they are the kind of person who is actually doing wonderful, amazing things and has no real reason to feel guilt, yet it's an emotion that we might be feeling every single day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just really, it's really important to just define the guilt. And for me, as a mum in business, it's something that I've had to really overcome, because I mean, I started my business to be flexible around my family, but then the reality was very different. That, like you've just said, like, you feel like you're not doing anything good enough, not doing anything properly. And it was very much a case of, okay, I'm with my children, but I'm thinking about work, and I'm feeling really guilty now because I should be present, I should be enjoying myself more with my children, I should be playing with them more, I should be giving them my full 100% undivided attention. Versus when I'm working, I'm not with my children, but I'm really enjoying my work. Why am I enjoying my work so much? Like, I shouldn't be enjoying my work so much. I should be with my children. And that's just my personal example, really, of like how mum guilt has really eaten away at me. And when you say toxic, I think the guilt, it then leads on to so many other emotions, that the anxiety and stress, and then the overwhelm, procrastination, not knowing where to start, not knowing what to do next, the unrealistic expectations on you that you put on yourself, feeling judged, feeling unsafe, I'm sure you will explain more about this. So yeah, and then obviously exhaustion and things like that. So it's really important to get nip this in the bud. So share more.
Exactly. I
Share
mean,
more.
no, the thing with guilt, there's two things that come up for me when you saying all that, and I'll put it out here for you to remind me to talk about the two things. So one thing would be this whole part of the expectation and the society, and why we feel guilt is often because of something that's called the perfect mother myth. So that's one thing I want to talk about, that kind of combines with intensive mothering. And the second thing, and it's already slipping my mind, this is why I need to tell you that right now, is, or guilt often is actually something that we feel, but is kind of a top layer of something else,
Yeah.
another emotion, an actually deeper emotion that is maybe a bit harder to describe and a bit harder to put your finger on, because guilt is something that, especially moms, we hear about it, we read about it, people talk about it, just like you and me today.
Yeah.
But in reality, what's been behind the guilt is something deeper and something a bit more personal. So there's these
Yeah.
two things of, yes, guilt, we feel it, but what is actually underneath that helps us to get rid of the guilt. And then the whole concept of perfect mother myth and intensive mothering. So let's start with that
Let's
one.
let
And
yeah.
basically, really what it is like, we are conditioned in a way that we should be perfect as moms. And you said the shoulds already.
Yeah.
Should love spending time with our children, should enjoy motherhood to the maximum, should enjoy it right now because it only lasts so long. We only have,
Yeah.
what they say, 18 summers, and we should really make the most of it. It should come natural.
Should always.
Women should be a mom because our bodies are made to reproduce. So we should have the desire to be a mom. All of that is part of like a social conditioning and this perfect mother myth. And I have experienced that so much because I've always been a perfectionist in my life. And when I became a mom, it just kind of amplified, and I wanted to have that picture perfect Pinterest, Instagram mom experience. But reality was just very different. But it was all, okay, what should I do? How what can I bring into this mother relationship to make it perfect? And with that, we strive for something that is very unattainable, because no one is perfect. We're all humans. We're all flawed. We have all our little things going on, and there is no book for parenthood. I mean, we all trying to figure it out as we go along. And we all know if you have more than one child, you think you have figured it out with one child, the other one is completely different and you're starting from scratch. Or you have a toddler and you feel like finally you're on top of things, and then they get to the next developmental stage and you start from scratch. Nothing can be perfect in life, but especially not in motherhood, I
I
think.
have a
But we thrive for it because that's what
yeah.
we see.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I
Yeah.
have a favorite saying, which is perfection is perception. Like
Yes.
perfection does not exist
No.
at all, but we're conditioned to believe that it does. And it does
Exactly.
mean something different to everybody. And I actually don't like to use the word perfect anymore. No, I used to say, oh yeah, perfect. Like, oh, that's perfect situation. Oh, perfect, I'll meet you there or whatever. I just don't like to use that word anymore.
Exactly.
Made it my
No, I like that.
mission.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And in
Um,
this whole perfect scenario comes something that's called intensive mothering. So where we, and I think this is a phenomenon of the age group that we are in, and probably also younger, Gen Z, I don't know, whatever generation, but it's probably not something that our parents had experienced so much. It's something quite recent, that if you want to be a good mom, you've got to be so involved in your child's development. You've got to make sure they eat the right food. You got to make sure they hit their milestones at the right time. They're good in school. They are kind. They are well behaved. They are smart. All of that, and all of that, you as the mom in most families are the person who has to take care of it, who is expected
yeah,
to figure this out.
yeah,
And this leaves you with a massive challenge that
yeah.
is, no one can tell you how to do this thing because
You,
none of us knows, but you're supposed to know it because naturally you're a mom and you should figure it out. But this is all, like, all these things are really challenging for us moms, and this is why I like speaking about this topic, because it really brings this lens of, like, the challenges that we're experiencing. And it's not just me and you, it's so many out there, for some more than for others. But at the end of the day, most moms, we are struggling in this parenthood journey,
yeah, in our own
one
different
way or
ways.
another.
And
And guilt comes in because
yeah,
we're like, we think we should know how to do this. We read all the books and they tell us all the parenting tricks, and then we try and we apply it and it doesn't quite work, and then we
and then
think,
we
oh,
feel
it
like we're
must be
failing.
me. I must
Mm,
have done it wrong. I'm failing
yeah,
and I'm not doing enough. So maybe I need to read 20 more parenting books, because if I'm only reading 5, I'm not reading enough, and I feel guilty about it. And this is the
yeah,
whole story that so many moms live and that I've lived. And that's why I feel guilt in that scenario is, it's not helpful, because it pushes you to do more.
yeah,
And I think there is a problem in society currently where we are doing so much already that many moms just don't have the capacity to do more. And
yeah,
it's not good for the family, because we already probably are very much involved in our children's lives, and maybe they don't always need all of us, like all of that on them. So if we step back a little bit and we let them do a little bit more and let them develop on their own a little bit more. So
yeah,
this is like, the guilt pushes us to do more, but more is not necessarily going to solve the
yeah.
challenge.
To our
So the
detriment.
guilt doesn't help.
And I mean, it's what in my line of work here, I'm um to do with calming and balancing the lifestyle, so you live your most fulfilled life. But the basis to that is calming, soothing your nervous system, because we
Yes.
are always living in a heightened adrenaline state, and in our nervous system is always overworked and overwhelmed and stressed, and then we become ill. As a society, we are putting ourselves under so much pressure that our body actually never gets that time it needs to rest and digest. And we
Yes.
feel that we should be pushing, pushing, pushing all the time. When, as you've just suggested, when we take the step back, we need to sort of slow down. You can actually see things
Exactly.
a lot more
Yeah.
clearly. You can see new perspectives, and then you can kind of realize, well, actually, I didn't do such a bad job. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm doing all right. I am
Exactly.
actually winning. Oh, perhaps I was a bit hard on myself there. But
Mhm.
yeah. And can I just say as well about the generations? It's interesting you brought in the generations thing,
Mhm.
because I feel really passionate about that as well. You're so right that, like, I think, take it back to even the 1950s, 1960s, the mums stayed at home.
Yeah.
The dads went off to work. And feminism, I am a great fan of feminism. However, I think it went too far. I feel like it went too far because nothing got taken away from us. Nothing.
Yes.
So we are
Exactly.
suddenly able to do everything a man can do. But wait, we still have to look after the kids and the home.
Exactly.
And it's, we need to try and start to reverse that. We need to try and know that it's okay to ask for help, know that it's okay
Exactly.
for the load to be shared in the
Yeah.
household, and that the husband isn't just there to provide the money, that we have to work as women, as mums now, because everything's so expensive.
Yeah,
We have
in
to
most
make
families,
women
it's
survive.
needed, required.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we actually can't do it all, so it's only fair that things are shared and to take that load off. So
exactly.
anyway, that just triggers something what you were saying, so I shared that in there.
No, I mean,
um
it's also like you kind of nailed exactly the things where moms feel the most guilt. It's the resting, is like the
mm,
taking time for themselves. Most moms really struggle with that and feel guilty when they do. But also this like, oh, not doing enough, not, like not knowing the latest, I don't know, whatever recommendations about screen time, and this
yeah,
like always adding to your to-do list, and always, yeah, showing up, being a great business owner, being a great employee, if that's what you do,
mm,
being a great wife, like always just all the things doing and not slowing down.
yeah,
And when we slow down, we feel guilty about it because, oh, well, now I'm not productive, because now I'm not tackling my to-do list, or now I'm taking away from my children, like now I'm going to do something for myself, that's selfish, and now I'm not there to look after them as much. It's all these things that moms struggle a lot with, and they feel guilty about it, but there's no reason, like this, it's
yeah,
not they do something wrong. So guilt, as the basic emotion, is an indicator, but the guilt that mom's experiencing have nothing to do with that. So it's, yeah, exactly, it's developed with all these pressures that we are experiencing, and it's just adding to a negativity to that experience, which we don't need, and that's why we need to let go of the
yeah,
guilt.
yeah. how
Yeah.
how much mum guilt do you think stems as well from an overall fear of being judged and of what people
Oh
think?
yeah,
Like,
so
I
much.
I mean, I know so many people that don't do stuff because they're scared of what people are going to think about them.
Yeah,
Um, but do you think that that is just part of the problem or a big part of the problem?
that's a good question. I think it depends on how much you really fear the judgment, how much that really rules what you do. So
Yeah.
for me, the judgment from others, but also your own judgment, I think this is also a big part where you're judging yourself a lot,
Yes.
is again, like similar to the guilt. It can indicate something that maybe I'm doing something that deep down is not really aligned with how I want to do things, how I want to be a mom. Let's say, like, let's take the example of shouting at your kids,
Yeah.
losing your temper. I mean, it happens to the best of us.
Yes, it
Um,
does. Even the
and
calmest of people.
often at the end of it, we feel guilty about it
Mm,
because we don't want to do it. It's not, I don't want to be a shouty mom. I want to be a calm mom. I want to be connected. I want to use my words in a nice way so that I can model to my children how to do this. It doesn't always work, but the guilt there tells me, okay, and maybe next time you can do something different. The same with the judgment. Let's say yesterday I was in a coffee shop. My little one has been very, very stubborn and very much like, I just want to do this and I don't care. He was been climbing over the chairs. There was a guy sitting there reading his magazine. I was like, oh, what's this guy gonna think of me? My boy is gonna bother him. What? And then I kind of like was like, Liam, you need to stop now. Like I was getting really frustrated. And I was like, oh gosh, now I'm sounding like that horrible mom who's like so grumpy with her child. I was thinking about all the judgments from the other people, but also I was judging myself. But taking a moment, I realized that I had a very busy day. I was hungry. I was tired. I didn't want to be in the coffee shop. I wanted to be at home, but I had to be there because I had to wait for my second child, like to be able to pick him up from his activity. So there was all these things going on for myself. So I was receptive to these thoughts, because deep down, and this brings me to the other topic that I wanted to bring up for guilt, there was other emotions that and other needs that were not met in that moment. I didn't take care of what I actually really needed. I was just there because that was the scenario, that was the plan. Now we're going to go and do it. And I don't know if the guy got bothered by my son climbing on the chair, but that was just me thinking. That's probably what he must be thinking now, because I am a mom who doesn't have control over her child. Now he lies down on the floor. Oh, it's dirty. Like, there's all these things that we tell ourselves, but we don't actually know if that's the truth.
Yeah.
But again, to go back into like, what are the emotions there? Well, again, it came back to like, I want to be connected and happy and calm as a mom, but I wasn't showing up that way. So I wasn't aligned with how I wanted to be and how I wanted to show myself to my little boy in that moment.
Yeah.
So the judgment in that moment for me is okay from outside, from myself. The question is, what will I do with that? Will I take that and will I beat myself up and say, I'm just such a horrible mom? Again, I haven't been able to stay calm. Again, I raised my voice to him. Tomorrow, the lady from the coffee shop is going to be like, oh, that woman again with her crazy child. Is that what I'm telling myself? Well, then there is a problem with me taking the judgment in the wrong way and beating myself up.
Yeah.
Or am I taking this and saying, okay, listen, and next time maybe you need to make sure you eat before you go to that coffee, like, or you order yourself a food there or whatever, like,
Yeah.
and maybe instead of have the expectation that you're just going to sit down nicely and zip your coffee, maybe just understand that the guy needs to run around. So maybe skip the coffee and just go for a walk. Like, what am I doing with that? And how am I taking this in? And am I changing my behavior that maybe isn't really the behavior I wanted to show? Or am I taking it and I'm like, oh, you're such a horrible mom. You're the worst. You're never getting it right. That kind of self-talk. So yeah, that's how I see judgment. I think it can, like, just like guilt, there is an element there that can be useful if we're using it to look inwards and to see, is there something that I want to change? Is there something I want to learn from that scenario? Yes or no? And we move on. But we're not sitting there feeling miserable and sulking in guilt and sulking in judgment and talking to ourselves with that horrible voice that unfortunately so many of us have in their heads.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about other people, what we perceive other people, what we worry about, what other people might be thinking.
Yeah.
You mentioned, you don't know whether that's the truth. Well, the truth is that we actually never know what other people are thinking. And when you can master that thought, that is really empowering, I find. Like, that has helped me so many times when I've started getting myself in a tears about something. It's like, well, actually, I don't really know that they're thinking that about me. I'm making this all up. Maybe they are thinking that, but they're probably not.
Maybe not. Probably not.
So that's something to really hold on to. The truth is, you never know what they're thinking.
Exactly. And even if they're thinking something negative, I think we can always try and rephrase it into something positive. So that person, that guy example, maybe he was thinking, well, she doesn't have her child under control. He's going a bit wild here. Well, maybe he's also thinking something like, oh, I wish I could be young again and climb on that chair. Like, it's such a boring thing to sit here. Like, we could try and have these.
Wish my mum was that fun.
Exactly. Like, this is exactly something I tell myself when this thought comes that I don't have my children under control. I'm more like, okay, like, I'm a fun mom. They are allowed to do crazy things with me. But exactly, it's like rephrase those thoughts that come up first, because they're, again, certain expectations, certain things that we've seen in society, how a family is supposed to function, how children are supposed to behave,
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah.
But we don't know what other people are thinking. We will not know. So let's tell us something positive. Let's think that they are thinking something positive, and that their judgment is not negative, but more like, oh, maybe, you know, she's an amazing mom. Maybe that's their judgment.
Well, I know you are, but but I have a lot of mum guilt around that control piece, actually, of like bringing my eldest, who's now 11, up in a way that I thought was expected of me, you know, how he must behave, and placing a lot of expectation on him. And yes, he is an incredibly well-behaved boy, but in some ways, like my guilt is that I've actually squashed him as a person by telling him, no, you can't do that, or you should be behaving like this, or whatever. So I've actually had to work with myself to overcome it. And now, like, I've spoken to him about it, so he understands that, because sometimes he looks at his little brother and says, well, I didn't get away with that, that's not fair. So both our phones went off at the same time then. That was funny.
That's my 2 o'clock reminder. It's like, it's usually, Anne, it's time to wrap things up. You've got to go and pick up your son. And I forgot to switch,
school holidays.
Switch it off, but keep telling. Yeah, I love that you're sharing this. And
it's what was it? Yeah, so we've spoken about it now. So he knows that we've got a bit of a running joke that you were my experiment. You were my experiment. And so if I say something, oh, I'm sorry, like, I, you know, whatever, he's like, I know, Mum, I'm your experiment.
So sweet.
So yeah, it's quite interesting. So yeah, I've worked a lot with mum guilt around that, like, oh, I've wrecked my child's confidence levels, and, you know, like, he thinks so badly on himself because I've told him off so much when he was little.
Exactly. I've damaged my child.
Yes. Yeah, I've worked very hard on that. As a family, we've worked hard on that. Yeah.
But exactly, I mean, this is also, just quickly to kind of probably wrap it up, because we can talk about this forever, but I think one of the important things is when we have emotions like guilt, and like I already said, we can use these to change our behavior, is to know, what do we value? Okay, like what is important in how we show up. So the calm, connected, fun mom is important to me. So when I feel guilt, it's probably because this value of being that kind of person, or doing things, taking actions that align with this value, is not met. And in that case, guilt is okay. And I use it to just check in, okay, what I'm doing here, is that aligned with my values, with my family values, with my own personal values? If not, then okay, what should I do differently? And this whole thing of like how we raise our children and how much we care for them, and this whole intensive mothering and the perfect mother myth, if we know what our values are, what is really important to us, it's easier to leave this aside, like to not, you know, take this up personally, but to be like, okay, some moms are like that, and in some places of the world, this is how motherhood is done. But I'm this kind of mom, I'm this kind of person, I'm this kind of woman, and that's what I do. And then we don't feel so much guilt about it, even though maybe it's not necessarily how society expects us to do motherhood, but it's how you, how anyone wants to do their own experience. And I think this is where it's very important to just be like, okay, guilt is there, it's telling me something, but will I listen to it? And will I listen to it in this like negative self-talk, criticizing myself and not feeling adequate as a mom? Or will I listen to it and be like, okay, is this really how I want to show up? Am I being the person that I say that I want to be? I think this is very much where I'm like, I feel guilt can be powerful. We can use it to diminish ourselves, or we can use it to really just lift ourselves up and live the life. And this is what you talk about so much anyway, what we desire, what we
Yeah.
want for ourselves and our family. And this is where
Yeah.
guilt is actually, it can be a good thing if we're using it in the supposedly right way.
Definitely. I believe that there's so many lessons from every single challenge that we face. And yeah, if we can learn from our guilt, then we are going to win. We can say
Exactly.
goodbye, say goodbye to
We
that
say
guilt,
goodbye.
the
Exactly. It
negative
can be
guilt,
there. It
the,
can come.
the
It can
negative
come
guilt.
on and say
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
And then when it's done its job, we say goodbye to it. We show the door.
And we emerge the next version of ourselves, the improved version of ourselves.
The more aligned, exactly. The
Yeah,
more
more
aligned
aligned.
version of like this
Yeah.
is really truly the person, the mom, the family that we want to raise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So important to check in with yourself. Oh, this has been amazing. It's been such an insightful conversation and powerful conversation, Anne. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been great.
My
Have you got
pleasure.
anything else that you want to add, or any last nuggets, or have
Any
you
last like
covered?
no, I mean, yeah, it's again, it's like use the guilt in the positive way,
Yeah,
not in this like self destructive, self diminishing way that that might feel more natural, because that's maybe what how we've learned to treat ourselves.
yeah,
But actually it's something that can help you to just become that better version of yourself. And
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
And I know you've got um you're offering a complimentary call. So if anybody wants
Yes.
to talk to Anne in more detail about anything, if any of what Anne has said resonates, then I will drop the link to book your call in the show notes. And I think that was everything. Yeah. Also your contact details and the calendar booking. And yes, thank you so
Yes, exactly.
much.
Book into my calendar if you want to have a 30-minute conversation about mom guilt or anything else that you might be having on your mind. And that just sometimes feels so good when you can chat to someone who gets you.
Yes.
And yeah,
Definitely. Sometimes it helps to talk to somebody unbiased, somebody who doesn't know you, somebody who won't judge you as well.
exactly.
Sometimes it's harder to talk to people that are close to you. It's easy to talk to people that you've never met. So
Yeah, going back, exactly,
yeah,
that judgment from the outside or from the inside, whichever way it is, it
yeah,
often keeps us in that place, in that
definitely.
whatever is going on. We stay there because we are a bit worried about what we talked about it earlier before we recorded, what the other people might be thinking
Yeah.
if we're doing that crazy thing.
Crazy thing. Yeah, absolutely. Well, very safe and non-judgmental spaces with Anne and myself. So yeah, highly recommend you get in touch with Anne. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for joining us, Anne. And yeah, enjoy. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.